It started with a silence so heavy it felt like the entire room forgot to breathe. Not because of chaos, not because of shouting, but because someone finally said out loud what everyone else had been trying to avoid. What followed wasn't a routine exchange, or a political performance, or a predictable hearing. It was a direct challenge to the kind of power that hides behind closed doors and hopes no one ever asks the right questions. And inside that silence, something became painfully clear. The bureau responsible for protecting the country wasn't just struggling. It was shifting, and the person sitting at the witness table couldn't explain why. The tension didn't arrive slowly. It hit all at once.
Where he operated with distinction. Medal of Valor winner, Shield of Bravery awards. He's a patriot. You terminated Driscoll via a letter dated October 8th, 2025, and in that letter you said that you were firing him pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution. Well, you're not the President of the United States, and so I'm wondering under what authority you were allowed to terminate him.
That matter is under litigation, and I'm not able to discuss it.
Okay, well, discuss this. Did you have discussions with Stephen Miller about firing this particular person or about his continuance in the FBI?
Not that I recall.
How often do you speak to Stephen Miller?
Frequently on our Homeland Security task forces.
You frequently talk with Stephen Miller about subjects other than Homeland Security task force issues, correct?
I frequently talk to Mr. Miller about Homeland Security task forces.
Has Stephen Miller ever given you his opinions on how to run your agency?
Mr. Miller's interagency operations are invaluable to the FBI. That's what we talk about.
So you frequently discuss your job and your responsibilities with Stephen Miller and Pam Bondi, I imagine, as well.
Absolutely. She's the Attorney General.
Understood. Okay. Donald Trump promised to make us all safer. You have pushed out senior FBI agents with decades of knowledge and experience. In fact, this is the first time in FBI history that neither the director nor the deputy director have any experience with the FBI. You've shifted the agency's priorities primarily to pursuing Donald Trump's immigration enforcement agenda. According to ICE data, the Cato Institute, which is a conservative think tank, found that 20% of all agents have been diverted from their work to assist ICE immigration enforcement. 20%. Part of this operation is the work of mass law enforcement who jump out of cars, snatch people off streets at churches, schools, and their jobs and hospitals. Have there been any FBI agents who investigate crimes against children that have been assigned to immigration enforcement, yes or no?
The premise of what you say is entirely false.
Have there been any FBI agents who investigate foreign domestic terrorism?
You don't get to say America is not safer under this leadership.
I am not saying
America
that.
is safer because of the work of the FBI.
You're making a presumption of premise.
4,700 children.
Sir,
we have seized 6,000 weapons and 23,000 violent felons have been arrested.
That FBI agents who investigate human trafficking have been reassigned to immigration enforcement. You are not denying that FBI agents who are on the task force that fight against Russian oligarchs have not been reassigned. Public Corrections Squad, reassigned. People who defend children, reassigned. You're not denying that. I've seen you time and time again attack my colleagues' premises of questions as a way to not answer the question. So let me end with this. I believe you have made our country weaker and less safe. I believe that we are more vulnerable to a major event, and I pray to God it doesn't happen. You've gutted the Bureau of Institutional Knowledge and Expertise. You fired or pushed out seasoned FBI officials, many with more than 20 years of experience, and were working on cases that were critical. You've been purging thousands of serious law enforcement officials who spent their careers keeping us safe, only to lower hiring standards in order to find anyone to replace them. And shockingly, you admitted in this hearing to Senator Coons that it would take 14 years to fill the vacancies at your agency. Many are the result of your purge. 20% of FBI agents are doing low-level immigration enforcement instead of their mission-critical work. You've disbanded entire task forces that stop election interference, foreign influence, public corruption. And who benefits from this? Well, corrupt people benefit from it. Criminals benefit from it. Vladimir Putin benefits from it. And it really makes me wonder who you're looking out for. It makes me think we can't trust you as a nation. You swear to release the Epstein files, but now you're withholding the Epstein files. You claim that you have a suspect in a serious assassination. Whoops, then you don't have a suspect. You know nothing about plans to remove FBI agents, yet you're directly involved in those plans. In the words of an ex-FBI official, you are overseeing, and I quote, generational destruction of the nation's premier law enforcement agency. Mr. Patel, in just 8 months, you have assaulted the institutional integrity of the FBI. But I know FBI field agents. I've worked with them in Newark. No matter how truly bad you are, you can't undermine the legacy of agents who fight every day to keep us safe, but you can tarnish the integrity of the agency and undermine the agency's capacity. I believe you're failing as a leader, and that your failure does have serious implications for the safety and security of Americans and our families. We're more vulnerable to domestic and foreign attack because of your failures of leadership. I don't think you're fit to hand the Bureau, but here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long. I think this might be your last oversight hearing. Because as much as you supplicate yourself to the will of Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States of America, Donald Trump has shown us in his first term and in this term, he is not loyal to people like you. He will cut you loose. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this. I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job of defending this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes,
at this
sir.
point?
That rant of false information does not bring this country together. If you want to work on bringing this country, it's my time, not yours.
My God.
If
You're
you
gonna
want to
lecture
talk
me
about
dividing this country,
it is
I
my
follow
time.
you on your social media posts that
It is
tear
my
this country
time
apart.
to
There
address
should be a
your
unifying-
falsehoods.
Oh,
You
sir,
are an
you can try
embarrassment
all
to the
you
division
want
in this
to
country.
not
Senator,
take
it is
my
responsibility
time.
for what
You
you
had
have
your
said.
time.
Sir, you're
Your
making
time
a
is
mockery of this
over.
committee. Sir, you don't tell me my time is over.
You
The
know how
people
far
of New
we've
Jersey
come
tell me
since
what my
you
time
tell-
is.
Senator,
You can't lecture me.
You can tell me
Sir,
my
you
time's over?
You may be the charge of the
I'm
FBI,
not going anywhere.
but I am not afraid of you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Not afraid of you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Senator Booker, I announced at the beginning of this meeting that this back and forth, talking over each other, doesn't work. And I said if that happened, I asked Patel not to respond, and I was going to give him some time after the senator's time was up to respond. And he has the privilege to do that uninterrupted.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
go-
one point of
Go
order.
ahead, Mr.
I've
Patel.
watched him talk over us, and you've never once criticized him for us not even being able to get our questions out.
Well,
He has been rude and disrespectful to senator after senator.
And when the senators were not giving him a chance to answer, I didn't stop the senator either. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the FBI, under my 7-month leadership, were failing this administration in this country, why do we have 23,000 violent felons arrested this year alone? A double increase from that time last year. Why is it that we have seized 6,000 weapons? Why have we found 1,500 child predators and arrested them? Why have we 300 human traffickers in jail? Why have we found and identified 4,700 children? Why have we seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl, enough to kill a third of the American public, a 25% increase alone from last year? 88,000 kilograms of cocaine seized, 7,000 kilograms of meth seized, and that's just on our criminal operations in summer heat. How is it possible that we're taking 8 kilograms off the streets of the cities in New Jersey and preventing the deaths of 607,000 people this year alone, a failure of the FBI and my leadership? How is it that we have counterintelligence arrests already this year exceeding the numbers from the entirety of last year? 33% increase in PRC, 83% in Russia, 60% in the CI space as it relates to Iran, and we haven't even talked about CT, the southern border, the northern border.
Before Senator Cruz, I kind of feel like a broken record today. All this interest in FBI termination, yet my colleagues showed no intent or interest in when my whistleblower suffered retaliation over the past years, particularly the past 4 years. Indeed, one whistleblower has alleged that Brian Driscoll's insubordination, whether an agent is on a hot button case or not, They ought to be held accountable for misconduct and weaponization. Senator Cruz.
Carried by a voice that refused to soften its words. It wasn't anger, it wasn't theatrics, it was urgency, the kind that comes from watching an institution you once trusted begin to quietly collapse from the inside. Because when someone who has spent years working with field agents looks you in the eye and says the Bureau has become weaker, more vulnerable, and dangerously compromised, it's not an opinion. It's a warning. From the very beginning, the pressure in the room was different. It wasn't just about policy. It wasn't just about mistakes. It was about a pattern of evasions, purges, reassignments, secrecy, and priorities that had nothing to do with protecting Americans. And as the questioning began, the person being asked to explain those decisions kept doing something that told its own story, dodging. Not once, not twice, but over and over, as if every answer might open a door they didn't want anyone to see behind. The first challenge was simple. A question any leader of a major law enforcement agency should be able to answer without a second thought. Yet somehow it became a maze of half answers, rephrasing, and awkward pauses. Because when asked whether conversations took place before their confirmation, conversations about removing officials, replacing career professionals, and reshaping the Bureau from the top down, the answer should have been straightforward. Instead, it twisted into something vague, something carefully worded. Something that said far more by avoiding the truth than by stating it. And that was only the beginning. What came next was the moment the entire hearing shifted. A basic yes or no question. Did the director tell a grand jury that key documents were declassified? A simple, factual point. One that could be answered in 5 seconds. And yet, the reply turned into a performance of evasion. Suddenly the transcript was the best evidence. Suddenly memory became cloudy. Suddenly legal excuses appeared even though the law was clear. A witness is free to discuss their own testimony. The refusal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Because admitting the truth would unravel everything else. That's when the questioning moved to the heart of the issue. The purge. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't rumor. It was documented, named, and backed by lawsuits. Career agents with decades of experience. People who had spent their entire lives protecting the country, taken off the job not for misconduct, not for failures, but for something far more alarming, political loyalty metrics. The kind of measurement that has no place in an independent law enforcement agency. The kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes operation that erodes expertise faster than anyone realizes. Point one case stood out, not because it was unusual, but because it revealed the playbook. A field office leader with Valor Awards, a patriotic career, and 20 years of service, terminated. Not through standard disciplinary procedures, not through oversight, but through a letter citing constitutional authority the director didn't even possess. When asked how such a firing happened, the answer was litigation prevents me from discussing it. A convenient shield, a predictable one, and yet completely unable to hide the scale of the damage. Because firing one person doesn't break an institution, but firing dozens does. And firing hundreds? That creates a collapse that could take a generation to repair. The effect wasn't subtle. It was visible everywhere. Entire task forces that handled public corruption cases, gone. Units that identified foreign influence operations, stripped down or reassigned. Teams that tracked organized crime, human trafficking, child exploitation networks, and oligarch money routes, reassigned to duties that had nothing to do with their expertise. And that was the part that stunned the room. Nearly 1/5 of the entire Bureau had been moved off critical national security work and into low-level immigration enforcement duties, tasks already handled by agencies built for that exact purpose. Specialized agents chasing street-level arrests, counterintelligence experts pulled from monitoring foreign threats, analysts who once tracked interference operations now monitoring paperwork. That wasn't a mistake. It was a redirection. And in that redirection, the country became softer, slower, less prepared, and more vulnerable. But the hearing didn't only expose what had happened. It exposed what was being hidden. There were promises made to the public, promises about transparency, about releasing files the country had been demanding for years. Instead, the files remained sealed. There were announcements about suspects in high-profile cases, then sudden reversals, unexplained withdrawals, stories that shifted without warning. There were statements claiming ignorance about personnel plans, even as fired agents described political pressure from the inside. None of it lined up. None of it added up. And every contradiction pointed in the same direction: concealment. The hearing struck at something bigger than one leader's choices. It struck at the way institutions are quietly bent, not through one catastrophic event, but through dozens of small ones. A dismissal here, a reassignment there, a sudden shift in priorities, a quiet halt to a corruption investigation, a decision to eliminate a task force, a silent rewriting of what the Bureau should be doing. It happened slowly. Then suddenly, that's why the challenge from the senior senator didn't come from anger. It came from fear, the kind that only exists when someone has watched institutions drift off their foundation and hopes it isn't too late to pull them back. Because when a bureau like this one becomes guided not by experience, but by allegiance, the country doesn't just become politically divided. It becomes structurally exposed. Foreign threats don't wait for political transitions. Criminal networks don't pause because agencies are reorganizing. Child exploitation doesn't slow down because someone decides expertise is optional. Corruption doesn't vanish because oversight becomes political. The senator laid out the consequences plainly. A bureau purged of its most seasoned experts. Leadership gaps that would take more than a decade to refill. Agents with 20 years of training replaced by first-year hires struggling to keep up. Entire divisions hollowed out. Priorities warped. Critical threats left unattended. This wasn't a critique. It was an alarm bell. And then came the part no one expected. The moment the senator looked the director straight in the eye and said the quiet part out loud. This may be the last time they ever sit across from each other at an oversight hearing. Not as a threat, not as a prediction made out of anger, but as an observation grounded in reality. Because someone who builds their authority on loyalty instead of competence is never safe from the system they serve. And because those who hand their independence to powerful people rarely get anything in return except blame when the structure begins to fall apart. The closing message wasn't vindictive. It was almost sorrowful. A reminder that leadership isn't measured by numbers recited under pressure, or talking points read into microphones, or defensive evasions disguised as legal caution. Leadership is measured by whether a nation becomes safer under your watch. And according to the evidence laid out, the opposite had happened. The senator ended not with a threat, but with something far more unsettling: a prayer. A hope that the director would find enough courage to defend the Constitution, protect the country, restore integrity, and walk back from the edge before the damage became irreversible. But the response was telling. Instead of humility, the director attacked the questioner. Instead of clarity, he delivered frustration. Instead of addressing the substance, he blamed the tone. A reaction that said everything about where the Bureau stands today, not anchored in strength, but drifting in denial. By the time the exchange ended, the room felt different. Not louder, heavier. Because everyone watching understood the truth. The country is only as safe as the integrity of the institutions that protect it. When those institutions wobble, everything else becomes uncertain. And that's what made this hearing so important. Not the politics, not the clash of personalities, but the exposure of a quiet shift happening inside a place that should never be guided by fear, favoritism, or secrecy. A place built for independence, not for obedience. If the Bureau cannot correct its course, the next crisis won't be a hearing. It will be something far worse, the kind of national failure that only becomes visible when it's too late. And that's why staying informed is no longer optional. It's essential. So if you want more breakdowns like this, deep dives, unreleased details, hearings decoded, and hidden patterns exposed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap like, and stay locked in. Because the story isn't over. And the next chapter is already unfolding.